So a couple of additional tips. I always have scraps of paper near me. These are, again, the 300-pound paper, so it's a similar surface to the one that I am painting on, or the same surface, really. And in doing that, we will not be surprised by how it goes down or the whiteness or the value that we need. So if I am painting a piece of, let's call this the side of a barn, and I'm working, in this case, dry on dry. We'll make it a purple barn. I can begin by painting here, or I can go and check it out in my test strip. And I'm surprised that, having done it as much as I have here, that circling this brush into the paint did not make it darker than it was. So I come back in and now it's substantially darker. So checking that out was an important thing to do as a start. If I want a full graded wash, which is what I'm going to demonstrate again, I need to know where really dark is. And I won't be able to do that if I'm only testing here. We can test here, but it might be better to test on this or a smaller test strip. So I'm going to go after more. So what I'm doing is making, again, circles with the brush. It's a round brush, and it's a mid-sized round brush, maybe a number 6. And getting a fair amount of paint on it and checking for darkness. And I might have to go again. Know how many times I've done this. So a couple of things. But if I want a graded wash across the side of this barn, I've got the dark paint mixed, and in there is something less than dark with a little more water. But I'm going to create what I call the water dam. And the water dam stops the paint from flowing where I don't want it to flow. If I don't do that, I could very likely have a fairly uniform value across the entire painting. And we'll show some examples of that in just a minute. But the water dam allows it to stop and protects the dry white paper beyond it. So this is that exercise. So at a 1/3 position, 1, 2, 3, I put a water dam, knowing that this will be the lighter side and that's the darker side. I'm now going to my heavy duty, heavy cream, darkest paint I can get on dry paper and putting it on this edge of the barn and getting even more paint without adding water. So see if I can darken it just a bit. If that doesn't work, we always have the option of going and adding additional dark pigment to that to make it even darker. That seemed to work. So we end up with a brown black as a start to the side of the barn. I thought that was going to be purple, but it's brown. The lights here are depicting. Without adding much paint, I go into the middle. We got more water there now. And we're moving across. And we're having a little bit of lightning going on. So we're creating, and we're trying to do it because it's the side of a barn in the relation of the barn boards, vertical strokes without adding. So we need to add more water to now not the thick paint, but the mid-sized paint. More water added, mixing. A little bit more of that. And if we keep overlapping just a bit, we're now getting to the water dam. If we do that, that helps us create, without adding much paint, essentially going to light. So we're ending up with a dark to light. We can reinstate this, adding some additional dark to our original brown, and redo it one more time from the beginning, dark, and it's now wet so that it'll work easier. And without taking paint off the brush, which we could do onto the paper towel, we can start the gradation in that wet paint. The game plan now is one task, making it as gradual as possible, moving to the water dam. But we're going to go a little further with pigment so we don't end up with so much white at this end. And now with pure water, and again not going all the way to the edge, it'll be a pure white. Horizontal strokes yet. we end up. If there's a line forming, we come back at that stage and tune it up with mid-size paint to get the gradation. Now we have a gradation of value. That is so much more interesting than to take one value and going all the way across the paper with one value. The trick is that when we look at photographs and when we look at reality, we see it averaged and we see it as one value. Because we're reducing the big world onto a small piece of paper, we have to create a gradation of greater difference, which is really there if you look carefully, and we don't end up with a uniform value and, I submit, a boring painting. So we're doing this over and over again for almost all the objects. We're creating not a single value, as I'm now painting, going across, but a graded value. Much more interesting. And so we're trying to achieve that. The part that I've added in this little exercise is the water dam, because it helps you stop the water from flowing and give you more control when you're doing the fine-tuned ending of the graded wash. So we'll show you some examples of graded wash and how it works. This is an example of a tree in our yard. But notice how the tree trunk grades. And this was a condition that I saw. It was like ground fog. And we ended up going from very dark on the tree trunk to quite light. We're doing this over and over again. Very dark to quite light. The whole power of this painting comes by having that graded wash and having water and a water dam here early, rather than painting all the way down at one value. This is also true for the barn boards. In this painting, we're going from dark to light and simultaneously changing some color. And we've come in and not painted and even lifted some of the light stripes coming through from below to add additional interest. But we're going on a graded wash from dark to almost white on that floor. That is happening on the barn boards, on all the pieces of the painting. We'll do one more. On a tree trunk, we're going from very dark to a graded wash to a light, and simultaneously adding the complexity of adding additional colors. We're going from darker to light on the ground plane. We're going from darker to lighter in the background, not so much in this case. That's more uniform and subdued in this case. Darker to lighter where the light is likely to be. Darker to lighter, softer edges.